What is up, guys? This is QM from the Trinity of Lift, and today I'm finally back for my 3-week break, and I'm here to bring all of you guys my Monarch deck profile for this November 2015 format. Now, I'm super excited to finally have this deck in the TCG, simply because I was waiting for this deck ever since it was announced in the OCG, and now that it's finally here in the TCG in physical form, in real life, excuse me, I can't wait to play this deck in this coming format, because I really do feel like it's going to be a very strong meta contender, as well as also I just really think all of the cards look really cool, which is one of the biggest ways for me to make a deck. So yeah, without further ado, let's just jump right into the deck profile. Now, I will say one really fast disclaimer: this is still a work in progress for me. I have tested this deck quite a bit before, but even though our format was never like the same as the OCG anyway, so because of that, I don't know how this deck is going to shape up in our format. So again, this is going to be a rough draft until more decks like this start topping and whatever and start coming into competition, and so we can see the trends that they do create. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So we're going to start off with 3 copies of Erebus, the Underworld Monarch, because he's probably one of the best cards in the deck now, because he is basically non-targeting removal for anything in your opponent's field or even their graveyard, as well as he can also rip a card out of your opponent's hand if you do so choose. And again, in my opinion, he's just really strong, and not to mention that he also has that really cool recycling effect of his, being able to pitch a Monarch spell or trap from your hand to just basically recycle any Monarch from your grave is again really cool as well. And he just does so much stuff for this Monarch deck, like set up your graveyard for with spells or traps that you might want to get there, as well as also help you recycle other Monarchs, and also have that really ballin' normal summon effect. He's just so good. And again, he's just a mandatory 3 of, because again, just his effects are so good. Moving on to the other Monarchs, we have 3 copies of Ether, the Heavenly Monarch. Now, she's going to be essentially your Stratos for all of the Monarchs, as whenever you do normal summon her, she can just basically special summon any of the other Monarchs that you have in your deck straight to the field by just sending simply any 2 Monarch spells or traps from your deck to the grave. Now, again, that's really cool because she can instantly put 5600 damage onto your board whenever you do whenever you do normal summon her. And basically, she also sets you up for future plays, because whatever you summon off of her effect, it'll immediately bounce back to your hand at the end phase. So because of that, again, you are setting yourself up for future tribute summons as well whenever you do normal summon her. So that's again pretty darn cool. And she also does have that built-in escalation of the Monarch's effect, which again is also really cool because you can use her during either player's turn to basically search out any Monarch that you might need for during your turn. So again, she just really helps you get to where you always want to be whenever you do normal summon her. So again, we have 3 of her as well. Then, moving on to the other Monarchs, we have 2 copies of Thessalos, the Mega Monarch, because he's essentially a really good walking Mind Crush. Like, if I could honestly fit 3 of this guy into the deck, I would try, because he's probably the best turn 1 normal summon that you have, because you get to look at your opponent's entire hand whenever you do normal summon him, rip a card out of their hand, banish it, and then if it's a monster, you burn your opponent for damage equivalent to that monster's level times 200. So yeah, if that effect didn't just make you guys just go, what? Like, it should, because this guy's effect is just so darn strong. Like, going first and summoning this can just give you so much information in regards to what you're playing against, what they might have, what combos they can do, what cards they have, what card you might want to rip, how to hinder them. He just does so many things during the early game that I just really feel that you should be trying to run this guy. Again, like I said, I would definitely try and run 3 if I could find the room, but for now in this build I only have room for 2. So yeah, we have 2 copies of Thessalos, the Mega Monarch. Finally, for the other Mega Monarch we are running, I have 1 copy of Chaos, because there is quite a few darks in this deck that you can tribute to get Chaos's big effect, and having the ability to banish any 2 cards on your opponent's side of the field and then burning them for 1000 is incredibly powerful, because you have the potential of course, banishing your opponent's entire pendulum scale, or also having the ability to just, again, banish any 2 cards from your opponent's field. It's just really good, but the thing is, compared to all the other Monarchs and all the other tribute summons you run in this deck, he is the only one that cannot be summoned turn 1, because his effect is mandatory, and if your opponent obviously doesn't have a field yet, he has to banish something whenever you summon him, so you basically have to banish your own cards, which is really counterintuitive. So because of that, you only want to run 1. You only want to search him whenever you do feel like you can go for that big chaos play. But outside of that, you never really just want to see him outside of, again, turn 2 and beyond. So yeah, we have only 1 copy of Chaos the Mega Monarch. And then for the final other 2 tribute summons in our deck, we have 2 copies of Vanity's Ruler. Now, I like this a lot better than Vanity's Fiend because, first of all, although he is a 2 tribute monster, because a lot of your other guys are 2 tributes anyway, summoning this really doesn't like make your game plan change all that much because, again, you will usually be fielding 2 tributes for all of your summons anyway. So because of that, I really felt that Vanity's Ruler wasn't that bad because he also doesn't prohibit you from doing any of your own special summons, as he basically is, again, a one-sided Vanity Emptiness for your opponent, which, again, is really, really good. And he can just basically make your boards almost unbreakable, because if you can back up your 1 tribute summoned Monarch with this after, you basically should just win, because again, he's just such a good strong locking card that your opponent is almost always going to find it difficult to find a way to remove this guy without special summoning nowadays. So again, we have 2 copies of Vanity's Ruler to round off our tribute summons. Moving on to the other cards in our deck, which are going to be starting off with the new Vassal cards and whatnot. We have 3 copies of Edia, the Heavenly Squire. Now, she's pretty cool because whenever she is normal or special summon, you can essentially special summon any Vassal-esque kind of monster from your deck straight to the field. So basically, by herself, she is going to be a 1-card double tribute for any of your Mega Monarchs or your big tribute summon. So again, that's really, really good on her. And another cool thing is that whenever she is sent to the graveyard by any means, you can grab any of your banished Monarch spell or traps and grab it immediately to your hand. So again, there are some pretty cool ways to recycle some of your key Monarch spells and traps with this card. So again, I just feel that this is an obvious 3 of, because she again just promotes a lot of your plays. So again, you have to have her at 3. To complement Edia, we also have 3 copies of Eidos, the Underworld Squire. He's really cool because he is what grants you an extra normal, another normal. He grants you another tribute summon during your turn. That is, again, pretty darn cool because he obviously can set you up with Idea. Like, usually you'll be going 1 Idea and then 1 Eidos, and this will be 2 tributes for your tribute summon. Eidos will then trigger off of Edia's effect, and then you can immediately tribute summon a monster. So because of that, he again just synergizes so darn well with the Edia that you also want to have 3 of him to always summon off of that Edia. Another thing too is that he also can help you constantly rotate your Edias in and out of your graveyard, because whenever he is in your grave, you can essentially summon any 800 attack, 1000 defense monster from your grave and immediately special summon. And again, usually it's gonna be that Edia because she also shares that same stats with all the other vassals. And because of that, as long as you basically see that Edia Eidos combo turn 1, you can constantly loop tribute fodder over and over during every single one of your turns, which again is really, really strong and can help you consistently turn out those tribute summons for this deck, which is again very, very important. So we have 3 copies of Eidos. Then for the last 2 monsters we are running, I decided to run 1 copy of Mithra the Thunder Vassal and 1 copy of Landrobe. Now, I'm really over the fence with these cards. Like, I don't know if they're the best thing to run for now, but I wanted to try and run a more proactive tribute summon fodder rather than run something like Reinforced Truth, which is what I was testing beforehand, as obviously you don't need to wait a turn to use these guys for tribute fodder, although they both only sadly count as 1 tribute each, again, because they're not like Edia and Eidos. But even though they still both have their quirks, Landrobe having the ability to just basically Book of Moon a monster from your opponent's side of the field for free, and then getting him onto the field is pretty darn cool, as it can help you out things like Naturia Beast, and it can also force a negation off of Cyber Dragon Infinity, and it can also Book of Moon Trap Trick Felicia, which again is another notable threat for this deck. So again, he has his own applications, and then of course Mithra is here to give your opponent a token for free for no reason, and then just special summon her straight away. Now both of them also have pretty darn cool tribute they both have pretty cool tribute effects, as when either of them are tributed, they both get an effect. Mithra lets you summon again for that turn another tribute summon, and Landrobe basically grabs any of the vassals, including Edia and Eidos, back to your hand, one of them anyway. So again, that's pretty darn cool, and they both have their own applications. But again, like I said, I am still testing these guys, and I'm not too sure if I'm going to keep using them going into the future. But like, again, we'll just have to see. So that'll be it for the entire monster lineup. Moving on to the spells, we have 3 copies of Pantheism of the Monarch. This card is dumb. This card is dumb. This card is dumb. Like, I don't know what else to say. The fact that this can unclog your hand by discarding any Monarch spell or trap with it and then drawing 2 cards helps you dig through your deck faster, as well as it can also set you up for any search for any of your Monarch spells or traps. So basically, it's always a +1 whenever you successfully resolve it, which is really darn good. And again, it just really helps Monarchs accelerate through their deck and help get to their big combo pieces that they need so that they can do their big tribute summons. So again, we have to have 3 copies of Pantheism. Moving on, we go into 3 copies of Domain of the True Monarch, which is basically a artifact scythe as a field spell, which again is pretty darn cool because if you can ever set this card up alongside a tribute summon Monarch during your turn 1, your opponent is going to be automatically locked out of their extra deck. So that's going to be a very, very big blow to them, as well as it's also a cost down, which is pretty darn cool because it lets you conserve some of your resources so that you don't always have to constantly tribute all of your tribute fodder for one big tribute summon, as you can constantly have them sitting on the board for your other future tribute summons, which again is pretty cool. And it also pumps up your Monarchs to 3600 attack whenever you attack an opposing monster. So that's again another cool way that they can get over a lot of big monsters as well. So again, we also have to have 3 copies of Domain. Moving on, we have 3 copies of Tenacity of the Monarch because this is a rota for all of your other Monarch spells and traps. So of course, to have consistency, we have to have 3 of this as well. Moving on to the other spells, we have 2 copies of Stormforth. I felt 3 was unnecessary because you don't want to ever draw this card. You only want to search it off of your Pantheism or your Tenacity whenever you do need to out a specific threat. But outside of that, you never really want to see it because, again, most of the time, it's going to be Erebus, Aether, or Pantheism fodder anyway. So I only run 2 Stormforth. Then I have 1 copy of March of the Monarchs because setting this up behind a Vanity's Ruler and or another big tribute summon Monarch is pretty darn good and degenerate in my honest opinion. We have 1 copy of Return to the Monarch because this also helps you circulate those Monarchs in and out of your hand, and it constantly just sets you up for constant future turns. So again, it's really, really good as well. Moving on to the other more generic spells in this deck, I'm running 1 copy of Rhoda and 1 copy of 1-for-1 simply because these are 2 spells that proactively get you to Edia as consistently as possible, as again, you really just want to see Edia as much as you can turn 1. So we are running these 2 cards to get to Edia again ASAP so we can set up our big tribute summons. So yeah, we have those cards. And then of course, we also have the obligatory 3 copies of Upstart Goblin because again, this card I basically run it in almost all of my decks. So yeah, we have 3 Upstart. So that will round us off from all of our spells. Moving on to our 3 traps. We start off with the Prime Monarch. Now this card is pretty darn cool because as a trap card on your side of the field, during each turn, once per turn, you can shuffle any 2 Monarch spells or traps from your graveyard to your deck and then draw a card. So it constantly gets you more cards from your deck back into it so that you can recycle some of your one-of important Monarch spells or whatnot. And it just constantly helps you dig through your deck as well for all those big tributes and all those big monsters that you need. So again, it's really cool because it accelerates you through your deck, and not to mention that in your graveyard you can banish any other Monarch spell or trap, and then you can special summon this as a monster in defense position once per turn. So again, that's pretty cool because it can set up your banish pile to get exactly the cards you need to recycle off of Edia's effect whenever she's tributed. So again, this card just really I guess you could say it just synergizes extremely well with how this deck generally runs. So of course we have to have those. I don't run 3 of this card, by the way. Also, I should mention I don't run 3 of it because it can clog a bit because it's a trap obviously, so it's kind of slow. So I didn't want to run 3, so I just felt that 2 was just fine. And then finally, for the last card of our main deck, we have 1 copy of Escalation, just because although Ether already has that escalation effect built into her, the fact is this allows you to tribute summon during either player's turn, and having the ability to potentially summon a Chaos on your opponent's turn is pretty darn strong. So because of that, I felt like having 1 copy of Escalation, it was just safe enough in my opinion. So that'll be it for the entire 40 card main deck. And now, because we are not showcasing an extra deck, I decided to basically show off the Yusei token first of all, which is obligatory, the Monarch token, which I'm going to be adding to my token collection at in my deck box, and I also got this random token from I forget where. Like I bought some cards online, and this came with the cards I bought, so I thought that was like cool, free token. But yeah, we have 3 tokens to showcase at the end of the video. Remember, kids, don't put this in your extra deck. Don't convey bad habits to your opponent and whatnot. Remember that. Don't forget. So yeah, guys, that will be it from my Monarch deck profile for this November 2015 format. Again, I would very much like to stress that this is still a work in progress, but regardless, this deck is still so much fun, and I am very much loving this deck, of course. So again, as usual, this has been Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift. I hope you all very much did enjoy the video, and I'll see all of you guys later. Peace out.